Hello, welcome to Conversations with Life, episode 7. We're calling this The Magic of Attunement. And welcome, by the way, if you're watching this, if you've watched the other ones, if you've never seen this before, welcome to our little humble podcast, YouTube channel, whatever this is. It'd be really helpful if you would subscribe, if you like the things we've been talking about, if you think this conversation has been rich and valuable for you, please subscribe. Push the little button below that says subscribe. Share this with anybody that you might feel, or any of the others that you might feel this might be a useful conversation as they're on their awakening path, as they're on their meaning path, trying to figure things out. We hope to be helpful. So thank you very much. And Sochi, tell me about attunement.
Okay, so I want to start with biological attunement and the concept of coherence. And when a baby is born, one of the best things that you can do is put that brand new fresh baby directly on the mother's chest. And the baby's body will actually regulate to the mother. So there becomes this coherence between temperature and heart rate and nervous system, and that we're all wired that way. So we're wired to kind of match and regulate each other. And I think that's one of the things that we're looking for when we're in a conversation with someone, and we're probably providing it without even knowing it. And particularly, when you see a mother with their baby, or you might even notice this with a baby, that when the baby makes an expression, you match the expression. And when the baby looks at you, you hold that gaze.
And you might even see that in life where you meet somebody and their presence just feels healing. You don't have to say anything, they don't have to do anything. You're just like, oh, wow, I just want to sit in that for a minute, because there's something about that energy that has met you at that time that is really, really beautiful. We hear the stories of some of the gurus, just their presence. They would show up and just not even say anything, and who knows, but like, I've never felt quite that much, but certainly have been in the presence of people that has felt like my system is doing something, and there's nothing that they're saying, that it's this something that's there.
I'm feeling into this energy of going to my grandmother's house every year for Christmas, and there was something about walking in to her field that was just, I just love you. I'm so glad you're here. And sometimes she didn't even have to be there, it was this field of her home that was so welcoming and inviting and nourishing that my system would just
Yeah, and we hear this in spiritual community. We hear this idea about transmission. This like, I'm holding an energy signature, and I want that to translate to you. And I feel that as a reality, or at least as an interesting game to try to create an energy field, or to receive an energy field that people are creating. So I think this works biologically at a birth level, and then maybe throughout. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, and you can also feel it when you walk into a birthday party, or you walk into a funeral. Right? There's kind of a field of coherence that you adapt yourself into. And you can feel that when somebody's really excited and they're telling you this amazing story, like, your face will probably start to match, or if somebody tells you something that's really sad. So it's a fun thing to start paying attention to, because there is a kind of natural biological piece to attunement. And some people are more, patterned and designed to have that kind of natural attunement than others. I have some friends who, the way that they developed that level of facial expression wasn't really safe. And I always felt a little bit intimidated by them, because I didn't know what they were thinking or feeling, because they just kind of had this blank, this blank thing. And so really fun to feel into the different, at that kind of biological level. And the point is, we don't show up here alone. This isn't a purely individual experience.
Well, it's a purely not individual experience. You show up with a mother and father at least. You know, like there's no getting here without people and in context. And then you know, usually within that mother and father there's a grandmother and grandfather, and there's you know, so, and there's community just that you take on. Whole sets of energies that are just here, that have to be here for you to even exist.
Awesome. So we have this basic biological thing. And then we could even call it a need, where when our nervous system gets elevated or activated, something about a good hug, you know, that really supports that regulation, or a cuddle, or even just somebody reflecting back. We talk about this with like active listening, like reflecting back to the person, their experience, without putting your story and judgment on top of it, and how, you know, how nourishing that is, how helpful that is for the nervous system.
Do we get or give hugs? Everybody always talks about giving hugs. But if two people are giving hugs, somebody's getting the hug. Both, of course, right?
Yeah,
but we talk about giving. I'm going to go give that person a hug. And, like, it's just a really interesting language that we always say give.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
And interesting to check in, is this is the kind of impulse under that. I can see that person might need some regulation. Or do I need some regulation?
Or is it just a mutual thing?
We're both celebrating that we're both regulated. Yay! It's a miracle. Two regulated humans in the same
It's really
space.
Beautiful. Yeah, nice. Right? Celebratory hug. High five. It's like an attunement high five. You know? Like,
a chest bump.
That's a secret, though, by the way. If you're giving somebody a hug and you want to really like create a thing, center your chest right on there. So put your heart chakra right on their heart chakra. It makes a difference, as opposed to something, you know. And so you'll notice people kind of have their different patterns, and they might even avoid you doing that with them. But I always feel that you know, if you give hugs, I want to like. Yeah. There's something about that that field that does work with each other.
Love that. Love that. Now I want to go talk all about consent and hugs. And why some people don't like them. But that's for another day. We will do a consent. We're going to stick to attunement. So we're going to go a little bit more into the energetics now. And the spiritual and archetypal place for attunement. And, you know, my description would be, this is a place for connection to greater archetypes and energy through the parents or caregivers. So the way that I'm sitting with it right now is we have this basic existential tension of unlimited energy in a limited body, in a limited form. And that is just going to create some level of friction, which sometimes feels really delicious and we don't even notice that it's happening, and other times there's more just more energy there, you know, like you can feel the energy bumping against the edges of the current form.
Yeah, and I think this shows up in instinct. One of the interesting instincts of all human beings is that we don't end, right? Like we kind of feel this energy, and it shows up in all the world religions and everywhere, that we don't end in some way. And I have no idea what happens after this world, no idea what happened before this world, right? I have, you know, stories or myths, or I can tell you things that I've intuited, but all that is, I hold it very lightly. But there's something in us that says we're eternal, right? And then we stub a toe, or we experience our mortality in some way. And we're like, you know, that could end. You know, and I don't know what that is, and just that thing of, I don't feel like I end. I feel like I'm part of this whole thing, and at the same time, I end.
Here's this form.
Here's this form. I mean, just from a biological perspective, you know, I think there's a tension there. From a possible larger metaphysical perspective, there's a thing, and then from an energetic perspective, I'm part of energy. Energy's flowing through me. I in a way, no energy ever dies, right? So we're right about the eternal thing, right? Like, everything I say and do reverberates throughout eternity, forever and ever and ever, and never goes away. And if I could invent a machine clever enough to get it all back and follow all those energy interactions back to me, I could look throughout history and find out all the energies that ever were and ever have been. Like, we know that energy doesn't die.
Yeah.
Once it's moved.
Well, and I think it takes the joining, if you will, of the formless and the form to have creation, to have growth, to have that transformative thing that's always happening.
Yeah.
In the universe. And so, it's fun to like feel into that deepest level of basic frustration.
And this idea that I am energy, I everything I do, and I'm going to lose control of that at some point. I mean, that's to me kind of what death is. It's like, okay, this consciousness is not in control of it. This brain or this system
is no longer
interacting.
Wow,
and I don't know what's there, interacting with things after that. So that tension is real, and it is the basic stress. Is that basic thing, that tension behind everything else. And
for me, just like finding that and realizing that reduced so much of the anxiety in my life, because I realized everything else that I felt that was uncomfortable was a story or a fear or a judgment or a shame that I put on top of that basic existential tension.
Yeah, but going back to when you're a child, there's no way you can understand this. You don't have the psychological wherewithal to handle this. Certainly not as a little baby, because you feel like you're everything, right? And I don't even know if babies necessarily have it, other than their needs, or they have needs and they cry because of their needs.
But the needs are them encountering their form.
This form, right?
That has limits.
Right, right. But they're not really thinking about it yet. You get a kid who's 5 years old, 6 years old, they start to really, 2 years old, I think particularly, and then 5 or 6 years old, really, really encounter this bigness versus the littleness. Yeah, right. Their actual littleness. Yeah.
So, the basics of attunement is it safe to be seen and held in frustration? And that's something that in our biological, in our neurological, in our emotional, and in our energetic development is really helpful.
Yeah. And a child won't thrive if they don't feel safe there. Yeah. Or they'll continue, but they'll hold trauma on that, right? And if we don't get that, then nothing else gets in.
Yeah, everything else just kind of
nothing is safe.
Goes into trauma and what we build on top of those trauma.
All our emotions become not okay, and no healing can happen, right? From a other perspective. We'll get to the kind of the spiritual version of this, the awakening energy, but like this. Unless that child is safe, nothing's okay. And then that life is lived in that way, and it continues. But if you've seen a child from a war-torn country in trauma, and where society has been completely turned upside down, and there's no safety, and you see a child from any village or any place where they're being normal children and the society is running at least somewhat normally, you can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their being, you can see it in the way that the body interacts with the world.
Yeah, and it's almost like they're presented with something that they're presented with a responsibility that they're not really capable of holding. And so their system kind of diverges from the natural biological process into this kind of distortion-filled manipulation thing where they're just scrapping for their needs.
And that part can be, by the way, always healed. There's always that moment. There's always the time. Anytime, any place in life. We used to think that by the time you were 8, those were the memories, and you were fucked up for life if you were fucked up as a child. Yeah. And now they're like,
up to age 4.
The neuroplasticity is a thing that can happen anytime. It's harder when you're older, but it can still happen. And memories can change, and memories develop anytime in life. And that's been a huge change that nobody's caught in life. And it changes up healing. It changes up our assumptions about how to work with people, right? Rather than, shutting off the bad people in the prison and, keeping the good people protected in this thing, this thing. It's like, oh, they're just people, and this can always be worked with.
Or even like the whole like socializing thing, which, I can see the goodness and the goodwill in, we're going to take, these children that aren't functioning normally and socialize them into this culture. But they don't really address, it's more like this behavioral management thing of, we're going to fit you into this box that you don't feel like you work in. We're going to make you work in the box and call that progress, versus I'm going to address the fact that there's some basic attunement that didn't happen here. How do we get the environment to attune them versus trying to fit them into an environment that clearly doesn't work for them.
I mean, there's just these different worldviews. Like, there's the chosen people and the not chosen people, right? That was a thing. Like, oh, you're out or you're in, right? And then there's behaviors, and we can make everybody good. We're just going to manipulate them to death, right? And then there's this something like, oh, okay, there's this traumatized people, not traumatized, attached people, not attached people, traumatized people, not attached people. All that are I think gone now.
Yeah, it's the Gabor Mate myth of normal.
The myth of
normal,
right? And that's a brilliant type of talk about. And he talks about how he's playing with the word myth in there too. But this normal piece, this can be worked. The hope is, the beautiful thing is, the thing that we're finding out is, attunement is magical.
So magical.
And, we didn't know we needed to do it. And we didn't know, even though, I think that's the way I think. I don't know. I don't have, data on this. But I think that's how talk therapy works. It's just simple. It's attunement.
Yes.
It's not about the words coming out of the mouth. It's not about any of that. It's simple attunement where the person feels okay to express their worst. And the psychologist says, well, and you should think about the fact that you are mortal as well. It's okay to feel it all, and it's okay to feel limited.
Somebody's sitting with you in that basic frustration. And so we have this kind of like, this maternal and paternal, and, anytime we get into these polarities and genders and stuff, we're always, we're always off in some way or another. Yeah. But we're going to use it as a, as a model. Okay, so terms. The mother is a portal or a channel, if you will, as a connection to the greater endless energy field that is trying to be expressed. So my version of this frustration is, as you grow, a little bit more energy appears in your form, and it starts to create this sort of agitation. And the maternal attunement has the capacity for the mother to see you in that and be like, yes, yes, you are limitless, you're connected to everything, and I can see you in this frustration. And then we have this dad energy that's this connection to presence that honors the limits. It honors you as an individual. It sees you on your journey of growth, and it's like, here's how you can honor your limits in a way that you can grow. Here's a way that you can manage risk so that you get to grow and go beyond your limits in such a way that you don't harm yourself or others. And that's kind of that basic paternal, like, I see you and your individual journey is valid. And when you have both of those things attuned, it softens the frustration between, the form and the formless. And then you actually get to go beyond or stretch your form to fit more energy.
And I love that go beyond piece, right? So the point of this, masculine and feminine, by the way, both mother and father express these masculine and feminine energies.
Yes.
But usually the feminine estrogen tends towards this openness and whatever, and the testosterone focuses, and creates action that way. So those two things are true. The whole point, and this is where the materialist notion of parenthood and everything really loses, is that you go beyond.
Yeah.
Right? So matter is matter. You are the thing. You are the earth. You are this earth. And pater is pattern. Right? So matter is the stuff you are made of. Pater is the pattern that you can run in this life. And if you stop there, you get to a place where you're stuck. Right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, we made a nice person. Huh. Good job. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Nice people are stupid. They're controlled. They're not, the whole point is that eventually mater and pater become less important, but there's no way to not do those. It's the setup for the next act.
Really, for you to integrate those greater energies. So it's like your parents are kind of like these examples or channels into this greater archetypal energy, and eventually the point is for you to hold that energy and hold the process of continual expansion.
Yeah, here's the game is your energy, right? And then you have to realize that in some way. So the game is pattern and material. Uh-huh. That's the game, though. It's not the reality. The reality is that's the game that energy is playing to get expressed in the world. And when you inhabit that, when that gets attuned, now you're at a place where you can see it, embody it, fulfill it, and move on. It's the process of maturity. You don't stay a child forever. Mm-hmm. And, staying a child means I'm controlled. I have this. Here's my mother. Here's my father. I'm just going to play out the things that they did, right? Because here's the pattern. Here's the material. So I'm just them. And here's my genes. And it's all determined. And I'm just going to do it. Icky world, right? The game is there's all the things happening. And I'm happening with it. And I come through that. And then I have a point of self-realization at that point. And then you become not a child. You become a grown-ass adult who can see the mother and father and say, yay, thank you for this gift of being okay with me enough that I could see this and then go on and make my other choices. Yes. And how much is that done? Almost never well.
Yeah. But we have the man-child epidemic. I think all of us have seen, those children that are still infantile, and they just control their parents, and they're not ready to take any kind of responsibility, and it's not fun.
Yeah, maturity's not a really thing that happens, and it's almost like church and state, education and church, fundamentalist religion particularly, want to keep you. They want you to go up to a point, and then they want to keep you there, right? Just functional enough to do the shit that they want you to do, but not so functional that you can be aware and actually be a grown-ass adult.
Because if you do, you will grow out of their container that is harvesting your resources, probably on multiple levels. Right.
And so then we repeat this pattern in our lives, in our relationships, etc., whatever. So the attunement is beautiful because it gives you just permission for your energy to expand. Right. Otherwise, your energy contracts, right? So expansion, contraction, and this makes you possibility oriented. They talk about having question oriented or solution oriented growth mindset versus, and this is largely the determinant that does that. If you're well attuned, you can move into growth mindset because your systems goes, it's safe to be here. Yeah, I have a body. I'm here. There's ways to be. Right?
Yeah, and you have a sense of your own risk management, and if you don't have that, life is scary.
Right, and this is why, God as a father without recognizing any kind of divine feminine is such a bullshit game. Right? It's it's all rules and no open to life. It's like, oh, by the way, maybe there's some feminine energy that can play at some point. We're terrified of the feminine energy because it's going to set us free.
How can we make this not change?
Yeah. The feminine, I love the feminines around me in their spiritual awakening because they are just like that. It's like, it comes out, it's like, hey, this is life. Hey, kids.
What else can we change here?
else can we change? You know, and there's some Kali in that shit. I love it so much, and it's a lot of big, challenging energy. You know, even if sometimes it's not attuned itself, it comes out and tries to challenge, especially the patriarchy, which is all pattern, which is no fun. Right? All control, no fun.
Totally denatured.
And if we did the other side, by the way, all mater, right? If we had a mother goddess, whatever, then we're just...
It was just chaos.
Yeah, chaos. It's just blah, right? There's no pattern to follow in that. It's just trying to embody just the life without understanding that there are controls and limits to work with. So it's, you know, on one side, like you said, it's this, I'm okay, my emotions are okay. And on the other side, it's this, okay, there's limits, boundaries, understandings that are really, really helpful in this discipline of life. We should pay attention to those in a way that is non-expectational.
Love that. Non-expectational, not judgmental, just honoring of the process.
Just the fact that there's this pattern to play between the two that really feels juicy gives us a template emotionally and socially to then create, become aware, become an adult, and then create from there.
Yeah, and as an adult, that takes you back to our podcast on orgasmic living.
Totally.
Really tuning into that tension and holding and honoring and enjoying it, you know, aside from all the stories and whatever we build on it. So, okay, your kid, you have some pretty good attunement from your parents. You feel that connection to the greater energies. And if you get attuned well, you learn, you grow in your capacity to hold and run and manage and create and use this energy. If you're not attuned, you get trauma parts. And what they do is they hold that energy that tried to come through, that wasn't welcome, that wasn't given a place, right? And then they try to use or express it or try to get it attuned in these subversive, manipulative ways. And then what you have is parts that come on top of that and say, oh, you shouldn't be manipulative. You should be ashamed.
Yeah.
And then there's a part that comes on top of that tries to protect that whole system, because what else were you supposed to do as a little kid when you didn't get attuned?
Well, and you know, we learned parenting that was the old school parenting was criticize your kids. Like if you don't love them. That's what they were taught, right? And you know, part of me started that way. You know, I need to tell my kids all the things that are wrong with them. And every time you're doing that, you're creating a part. You're creating a judgment. You're creating a voice in their head, and they already don't feel good about themselves from being not attuned because you're criticism, not support.
Right.
Criticism is never support.
I had somebody tell me one time that one of their gifts was being able to see their children's faults. And it struck me as so fascinating, you know, because that was not the way that I was attuned, you know. But they really felt like that was their, you know, this gift. Well, that's not what I was witnessing with them and their kids. What I was witnessing with them and their kids is that their kids were withdrawing more and more because they already knew their faults. What they needed from their mother was
affirmation.
I love you, and this is a wonky game, and, you know, I'm here with you, you know? And,
you know, for all my messy spiritual awakening and the craziness it brought to my family and all that, right? For all that, what I can show my family from this is I'm here to work this out, right?
Yeah.
I'm here to work this out. And there's no right way, kids. There's no right way. And you know, here's some ideas, and here's some practices, here's some books, you know, maybe these will help, but there's no right way. And anybody that tells you that it is selling you something. You know,
they want to keep you in,
they want to keep you in that box.
Container,
they want to keep you in the box. Energy, they want to keep you in their container. They want to keep you in the, you know, it's hard to run a container, by the way, as we know, that where people keep coming through, because that's the idea. You want them to come in and feel something, and then sometimes challenge, we'll talk about that in a second, and sometimes they get the medicine, they move on. Sometimes they're threatened by that, because then they would have to accept parts of themselves. But that doesn't want to, like, capture people.
Right. So I want to go into a few different kind of models or scenarios where this is really played out that I think helps understand this childhood attunement thing. And it can be applied to like later in life spiritual awakening, that kind of stuff. So we have the kid at the park at his sort of like homeostasis energy and form, and he goes off to play because everything's fine and he feels safe, right? And then he, falls off the monkey bars and gets hurt, and he has this big experience, and his nervous system goes woof, and he goes back to his parent or caregiver, right, and climbs up on their lap, and they hold him, and well done attunement is stay here, I got you. And then when the child is ready, like they'll feel a completion of that attunement, and then they will actually go away and go play again. And that could also happen if they made a new friend, so they're experiencing upper tension, in a big way that they haven't before. Like their system needs to share that, so they'll come and they'll tell you, and then they'll run off and play again. Or a baby who's excited and explorative, and you're looking them in the eyes. Well, something that happens is if they look away, that's their signal that their system's overstimulated and they're complete. And if you try to keep getting their attention, you're going to actually overwhelm them. Or if you look away first, that's going to create a wobble in their system because they're wondering what they did to lose your attention. And both of those things can kind of create a little bit of a wobble in that attunement place. Another example is the kid building Legos. So initially they might just be watching you make something with the Legos, because initially they're just going to be throwing them around or whatever. Then they're going to see, oh, they're actually making something, and then they're going to try and they're going to get frustrated. And if you can just hold that on or witness the frustration until their nervous system is back in a learning place, then you might be able to show them, oh, this is how they go together. You might even be able to take their hands, right? Well, the next time they get frustrated, you might wait a little bit longer before you come in. You might hand a little bit more of that responsibility over to them, and that's actually going to feel really yummy to their system. Like, oh, they trust me to be in my process and in my journey. I'm not going to get shamed for my, frustration. And I'm also not going to get rescued from my growth. And you watch that and you hand a little bit more and a little bit more. And eventually they sit and they build their own stuff without, they might just bring you the completed project and want you to celebrate, right?
Right.
And that's
I love that.
Fun.
As you were saying that, I had these visions of when my kids were little. My two older boys were little. They're in college now, but they would follow me around. My oldest one especially would read a book and have such a meaningful experience with the book. He wanted to tell me all about the book. The whole book. Which, what he's looking for is like, hey, I had a meaningful experience with the book. And can I share that with you? And then, the more I could listen to that, the more that gets validated. And he's like, oh yeah, this is, I'm living part of life in this way through books, or watching a show with a kid where you're both really enjoying it and you're talking about what the different characters did and how they're like, reading a book with children, by the way, is this magical thing that seems to be a basic place of attunement where you're reading with them and you're experiencing with them, and they get your experience with it at the same time they're having their experience with it, and it's different and it's the same, and it's this interesting emotional container
that just like naturally produces learning and growth, right?
Learning and tuning.
Just doing that, your kid will learn how to read.
Just doing that.
And it's interesting to think of even biologically that them being on your lap, your hearts are together. So they're getting that basic safety that is necessary for learning. And then you're doing this thing together. Yeah. And they're automatically going to take on more and more and more of the responsibility in that game because they want to. They want to catch up. They want to grow. They want to be in a place where they can interact with people.
Is it safe to feel good? Is it safe to feel sad? Is it safe to celebrate life? Is it safe to fail? in that place. And all of that is the question that the little systems are asking.
My other example that I came up with as I was thinking about this was when my daughter was little. She was a just water baby. Still is. She's a lifeguard. Like, she was born in the water and she loves the water. And she was about, a year and a half, and we would go to the pool. And I would just sit in like the 2-foot deep water, and my little boys would play, and they had their floaties on so they could have a little more freedom. But every once in a while, it would be like, Mom, look, and I would look away, and she would go underwater every time I looked away. She would just sit down, because it was like she knew she could swim. And by the time she was 4, she was swimming.
Previous life coming in there. Like, hey, we know how to do this.
And I could have, fumbled that process in a couple of ways. One being, I could have sat and berated her, pulled her out of the water. What do you think you're doing? Don't ever do that. Tell her all these horror stories of kids who drown, right? I could do that. Or I could just let her do that until she almost drowns and pull her out and just be like, that's what you get.
Yeah, infantile grandiosity said, I can do what I feel like doing. And similarly, I had a daughter who watched the mermaid show and decided that they could breathe under the water and that they were actually a mermaid. And it was just amusing to watch them try. And then, they'd come out of the water sputtering, I can really do it though,
Yeah.
And
so
just like
whose responsibility,
right?
Right. What's the responsibility of the parent in that? And that's where the attunement comes in. Hey, I see you, and you really want to do this, and I'm here with you, and I want you to be safe.
Yeah.
And this is a higher level of risk than you're ready for. And because she was 18 months old, there wasn't a lot of communication available in that way. And so I had to take on the responsibility of keeping her, from going under or pulling her up quickly. Like, I had to watch her to help with that responsibility piece.
And isn't that interesting? It's like, I want to engage with this element. Like, there's the mater, right? And the pater is we breathe oxygen, right. and there's a way to get under the water that you can do, but there's ways to create that, right? Yeah. And maybe some human could exist that way. People have done all sorts of crazy things once they get understanding the balance in the state. Then, whatever else from there is possible.
Well, whatever the pattern is, when you make peace with it and really inhabit it with your full energy, that's when you're able to move beyond.
Then you can move beyond. And only then do you have any capacity to move on. And some things are not worth moving beyond, by the way, like breathing underwater. For me, maybe I could do some crazy yogic practice and be able to do that.
Well, and they have those cultures that diving is their thing, and they can stay underwater
for a long time. Right. They really can, and that's lovely. For me, that's not my culture. Not worth it for me to overcome that limit or push that limit in any way. So, but there are other limits that I want to push, other things that I want to do and create that aren't, having come to some kind of healing or stability or, mater pater in my own system, I can go, okay, what's possible from here, right?
Well, and I think it's important to address the fact that the mater or the energy always wins. And that's what actually is moving you beyond.
Right.
And that there is a part of us that's kind of pissed off
that we can't boss bitch everything.
That we need people. There's a part of us, even I think as a little baby, that we're so pissed that we need people. Because it really exposes those edges and those limitations. And it kind of creates this interesting balance between need and needing to be needed as a kind of way to counteract that. So if I need you, if I can get you to need me back, then somehow my system feels a little bit more at ease. And the manipulation that can happen and the codependency. And so I want to go into, 3 words here and do a little exploration with entitlement, expectation, and responsibility, and how those kind of play into this potentially, manipulative or distortion field that most of us are dealing with because of our trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And how we can bring more awareness to those things and create consciously with them.
Mm-hmm.
So entitlement to me is this sense that other people's resources are mine and I should have them.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything for you that's different from that, or that you sense in that?
Oh, it's just I'm bigger than I'm bigger than I really am. So I'm just assuming that this is mine rather than this is mine. So it just doesn't, it's not even a question, right? Your power should be mine, Chill Swan, right? You just give me all of your power, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm just this. And of course I'm this.
Yeah.
And you can't, it's not something that you decide to do, right? You're attuned, and so your energy's all out here. And somebody in that energy, they're really magnetic. That entitlement energy is no joke. It's like, oh, I guess so. It's like when someone thinks you belong to them, a lot of your system is like, oh, I guess so.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because of responsibility. So part of the entitlement thing is, I don't want to be responsible for my needs. I don't want to be responsible for my personal energy. And there's a difference between personal energy and archetypal big energy, right? And so I don't want to be responsible for my personal energy or my personal limitations / needs. So if somebody else says that they have all the power, and that they can hold it, heck yeah, I'm going to give them some of my power, because I also get to give them some of the responsibility in that.
Right.
And with kids, that's healthy, right?
Yeah.
They should be entitled to a certain amount of their parents' personal energy.
But not all of it, right? And there needs to be boundaries drawn. And then the whole parental game is to move that boundary more and more and more and more and more and then to them as soon as you possibly can. That's what raising a child is. To where you're giving them all their power and all their responsibility, right? As soon as you possibly can, with safety and understanding and holding, and if they need to move back, if they moved away, that's this, and they move back. And, we play this game in our relationships.
And I think maybe even a definition of entitlement could be, I want all the power without the responsibility.
Yeah, I want the power without the responsibility. Or, I assume the power, and because I assume the power, I also assume no responsibility. Rather than I take I understand my power and I understand the responsibility. David Data, a teacher on sexual energy, says this really interesting thing. He says, don't have sex with anybody if you're not willing to be responsible for the outcome. And I think that's a really, really good thing. I don't know who should have sex with who and how that should work, but being in energy with somebody in that way, to be responsible for that is really interesting. And that doesn't mean if you have a big energy experience, by the way, you commit the rest of your life to somebody, because that's just the other way, right? Yeah. That's entitlement. Oh, I had a big energy experience to you, so you're my soulmate.
You're mine now.
You're mine now. Collected, right? Or something about you is mine. Even that is icky. But it's this, okay, we had this big energy experience together. Aftercare, communication, understanding, maybe helping that process or whatever is really valuable.
And it's like, wow, thank you for showing me that pattern, right? That way for energy to be bigger, and access them. I want to start taking responsibility for that, so I can hold that myself.
Yeah, and that should be the goal, which you can get into all sorts of manipulative bullshit there that isn't responsibility. It's manipulation. The responsibility can't hide, and manipulation can't hide.
Yes, totally. Basic codependence,
right? So I'm being responsible for you, but really what I'm doing is I'm like controlling the hell out of you, right? Which is responsibility is boundary and respects the other person's boundaries.
Or it's like, I'm giving all of this power to you, so you can be a real man or whatever. But then you have to take care of me. You have to do everything I want.
And if you don't,
it's
totally,
really fascinating.
Totally fascinating.
So, that's fun, like this entitlement and responsibility thing. And then expectation is kind of this in-between place. So expectation can be a really like manipulative, subversive, like unconscious way to entitle ourselves to someone else's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is one of the, great relationship destroyers is unspoken expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have this whole story running that the other person, is in your same reality, and it suddenly gets crashed, and you're like, oh, but I thought this was my, first Valentine's Day, like, oh, I finally secured this person in my life, and I'm gonna be somebody's Valentine, and I have a whole story of what that means that I didn't communicate to my husband, and that was not a fun experience.
No, right. Well, it's funny, we try on and we take on some of these expectations in containers like Christmas or any of those societal norms as expectation, right? And it'd be often, Christmas is the most miserable time of the year for a lot of people, so it's Valentine's Day, because of these expectations that those energy containers create.
Yeah.
But, if you're a grown-ass adult, energetically, and by the way, I'm not shaming people who were traumatized around these areas, because these are not patterns we chose. We didn't choose to be traumatized.
Right.
But when you get into this place of independence, then take them as you want. Right?
That's you can start to shed some of those expectations. Don't take responsibility for stuff that you don't need to.
Right.
You don't need to take responsibility for everybody having a certain emotion on Christmas morning. Unless you want to.
If you want to play that game and it's juicy for you and you're going to borrow the energy of the community and society, then I think that's beautiful.
Throw a party.
It's so much easier to create a beautiful experience when everybody else is doing it too. And also, if you're getting played by it on the other side, you're not in that responsibility.
Yeah, and another sign that you're getting played by it is that you feel somehow personally attacked or offended if somebody doesn't want to come to your party.
Right.
So you don't really want them to be at choice.
Yes.
You want them to come do your thing. And you have to think about that. Like, how are you using their energy in that space? You think you're being so generous.
Totally, right?
Like, if you're getting put off and offended and taking it personally if somebody doesn't want to play with you, there's a part of you that's using their energy.
Right.
So it's a great awareness.
It's all non-attunement, right? Attunement says, look, I got the balance. I understand that my emotions are okay. I understand that there's limits and that boundaries are important, etc. We're there, right? I need to express this, I feel. You are not responsible for your misattunement. Period. If you didn't get that, and if you didn't get that, and you didn't, on some level, we're all
these patterns are not your fault.
Nobody chooses to be a narcissist. Nobody chooses to be a small energy that needs other people to complete them. Nobody chooses this stuff. And if you go through life expecting it, that's its own special type of misattunement, right? Like non-trauma. The reason why we haven't been trauma-informed is because we really want other things to be other people's fault, or we really want people to save us. One of the two.
It's the responsibility piece.
Right. And that's kind of like the meta non-attunement, right? But you aren't responsible for your misattunement. However, the responsibility and the beauty of claiming your own attunement, which again can happen at any age, at any time, you can claim these parts of yourself. You can self-attune or find other people to attune them. And I think that gets us to this next place.
And when you find that, that's when your responsibility kicks in.
Yeah.
And so like an example is nobody loves me or wants to hang out with me. I have no friends. And so I'm like, oh God, that must be terrible. Let's go hang out. And so we go hang out. And then the next time I see them, nobody loves me. I have no friends. There's a part of me that kind of goes, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
You're like, do you want to take a little bit of that? Like, I'll keep hanging out with you. And at some point it feels dishonoring for that person to continuously say they have no friends when I'm showing up as a friend.
Totally. I have no support. I have no friends. And you're like,
here I am.
I'm nothing?
Right.
Well, and they easily overlook that because you must have made a mistake. Or you must be pitying them in some way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So because they're too wounded to let that friendship really open them. And that itself is its own trauma pattern. And it takes some time. And it takes some patience to sit with somebody in that state. And sometimes that's not yours. There's opportunities there for you to work with somebody that way. And sometimes it's totally dishonoring and you're never going to show up.
Yeah, and it's a really good boundary exercise for you to say, okay, what is my responsibility here and what do I need to hand back?
And you're totally never going to be enough for that person. And you setting a boundary consciously and lovingly will be an invitation to them, right? So
take that on,
right? So rather than continue to show up them and not be appreciated, which my system really wants to do, it just wants to show up for people, right? Because maybe they'll see me, maybe sometime, maybe sometime, I'll actually feel love,
Same, yeah.
And it's just funny, I just watch these little parts of me, and they're just so cute, and they're just so trying to be loved, and to actually say, well, no, that isn't honoring, feels like death, because part of you was so built around that misattunement that to create a different pattern, it's like soul wrenching.
Yeah.
So hey, being compassionate again with yourself and others on this, by the way, we're all little children in a way. We all carry pain that you cannot see, you cannot understand. That's totally separate from experience, from dramatic stories or whatever. We all took this on in some way, and sometimes we can't even see it, right? We don't even know why.
Yeah, always we can't see it.
Yeah, always. But like sometimes I can look at my child and say, "Oh, isn't that I had a fine childhood, privileged childhood, whatever." Yeah. And then, but as you get to the other side of it, little things come around. You're like, "Oh my gosh, there was a lot there that."
Totally.
That they couldn't have done better, and I couldn't have done better. It's just the way it was, but I choose, and I want to work past that. I want to not be run by these patterns anymore.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the ultimate thing that we're trying to get from this attunement is more freedom, being a choice more and more and more instead of being in that compulsive energy where you're just like, I don't even know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I have all these expectations on other people that I don't even understand. I'm never feeling met. Nobody shows up for me. Like that was one for me forever. It was like, nobody shows up for me. I show up so big. Nobody shows up for me.
Yes. Until you ask the magical question, truth or trauma?
Yeah.
Right? And then follow your trauma because your trauma will find your truth. And this is where we get to a spiritual awakening because usually your misattunement or even your really good attunement is the seed for the awakening that you can have in life. So there's this biological, energetic, psychological, as your brain developing attunement type of thing. And then there's something else, and every spiritual tradition has something in its way where there's the second wakening up, second childhood,
the rebirth,
second attunement. And you'll get there usually by playing out your bad attunement into such pain that you can't handle anymore. And you'll either get so alone, so owned, or so overextended, or so under-resourced,
so bored,
or so bored that you'll have to ask the question, there is something else, right?
Yeah.
How do I then grow that part up? And that is your meaning self. That is your spiritual self. That is your God self that apart from the psychological and in connection with it, apart from all that, is what's happening here.
It's almost like you're really ready to take responsibility for that existential tension.
There you go.
And so you feel the energy of like, I'm ready. And then that's when like all your trauma kind of comes up and gets stirred up, and you find yourself in some kind of midlife crisis or dark night of the soul or whatever. And you get to go into this.
And if you're listening to us, by the way, you're in the middle of it. Welcome. Because you wouldn't be here, right? You wouldn't be listening to Conversations with Life. You wouldn't be, you'd be, you'd be following some religion still and trying to, look up the tenets of somebody else's spiritual awakening.
Yeah, deepen practice, deepen pattern.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you'd be, trying to drink it out, or you'd be trying to fuck it out, or you'd be trying to do something else. All of which, I recommend try to do them. They don't work.
Yeah, take it all away.
Take it all. Yeah. At some point
follow it to the end.
You get there. And if you don't die from that.
Try not to die. The end.
Then you have to ask these questions. And now it's time to, in my experiences with people, is doing this with myself. And getting to this place where I realized that my lack of attunement was so painful that I had to create something else. And at the same time, going through this meaning process and those two intersecting in this really beautiful way, like they always seem to do. And how do you then self-attune, right? Because now there's no mother or father, right? And there are mothers and fathers.
Yes.
And there's the feminine and the masculine out there, up there. I don't know, right? But I experience them as at least psychological and energetic forces, realities that you get to encounter and get to then work with in your own self to create attunement. This second attunement, right? It's the second birth. It's the rebirth. It's the regrowth. It's the template. For the cosmos experience. It's the balancing out. It's the holding and healing. This is where that this kind of awakening energy moves into.
And this is where I want to touch back on responsibility before we go farther into the spiritual path, because one of the things that I think a lot of people miss as they launch into this is like measuring their personal resources and understanding their personal resources. How much time do I have? How much attention do I have? How much energy am I holding, in an attuned way that's, I have some consciousness around it. What are my physical limitations? How much sleep do I need? How much food do I need, right? Doing a little bit of inventory can go a long way. And one of the reasons it can is because it can help you start to measure, when am I holding an attunement field for someone, and when is someone holding an attunement field for me, and when are we meeting in a more compatible space? And I think that's where a lot of like relationships get wonky, is that there's not that really honest measurement of what my resources are. And here's the thing, if you're more resourced in something, at some level you're playing that parent role. And you have to be aware of it, or you're going to find yourself in an unconscious power dynamic that's just going to mess things up. And I think this also helps us understand the whole privilege field. There's so much bitterness and energy in that. And if we can just kind of understand, like, oh, there are some places where I am just more naturally, inherently resourced than other people. Okay. Now I'm going to measure into that, and what do I have available to balance that out so the other person can become my peer, so the other person can become compatible, because that's what we want. We don't want to play together. We want peers. And being able to notice and understand our resources is going to help us, so that we're like, okay, I have more money than this person I'm going into relationship with. Automatically, there's the power dynamic there, that if you can watch it and hold it, then you can provide some responsibility and gradually hand a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more over to the other person, just like a parent would. So that eventually you're existing in a more harmonious place with them. That's less unequal.
So, resources are interesting because ultimately all resources are energetic. So the question is, how is my energy expressing itself? And energy ultimately is unlimited. So there's two questions, I think, with the energy thing. One, how do I open up more to energy? How do I find the energy of the thing that I want to create? And how do I open more? And how do I not fry myself out on this other side, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are, from an energetic perspective, I think there really is no, for instance, patience, people say is a resource, it's a virtue. It's not. Patience is unlimited. It's just an energy. It's just you being okay, right? With anything, anytime, anywhere. There is unlimited amount of patience in the world. There's an unlimited amount of productivity in the world. You can do so much in so little time. Einstein time, I like that idea from what's his name? Big league guy.
Hendricks.
Hendricks, yeah. Time itself will bend around you. Your resources, your love, your energy, all of these are not limited resources. And if you don't try to manage them on the pretending that they're the I don't have access to all of the energy side, you'll fry themselves out and you'll collapse your whole structure. But if you manage here and up your energy here, right? This is where we're talking about where once you're attuned and once you're kind of spiritually on the path, then you can start to create some of these other things for yourself.
So I like this, what container am I in right now? And that's kind of that inventory of resources. Where are my edges? Where are my boundaries right now? And then say you're like, okay, I see it, I honor it, I'm in it, and woof, next. And then there's a tendency when we go to that next place where we get access to more energy to fry ourselves out.
Right.
So when you feel that, where's the next edge? What's the new container?
On both sides. And I don't think you're honoring yourself and you're not holding yourself in attunement. And notice pattern mother here again, right? Like, I don't think you're honoring yourself because it's almost like this gate, right? Where like, okay, I'm managing my energies. I understand. Here I am. I've just met myself. From here, now I have this ability to grow myself out into these other things, right? But if I don't pay attention to both, if I'm not doing this, and I'm just trying to do this, for instance, I'm just going to attract everything I want because I feel like I should have it. It's powerful energy, right? But if you don't have access to the energy that's going to bring this into play, it's not going to work. So, attunement.
Or you get the energy and you try to force it into like some kind of dogmatic thing.
Yeah.
And then it's just
fuck yourself up. And also, here's the thing. Here's the funny thing about energy. It doesn't care what you have. You want to be rich? You're rich. I'm rich. I feel rich. I feel abundant. Every cell in my being is just alive. What else do I want? What vacation? What lover? What experience is going to make me feel more than this, right? Yeah. So I just open up to the energy. Now, how does that express itself? Well, it's interesting, right? Because one of the interesting things that we get to do is trust the pattern instead of create the pattern.
I love
and we get to meet that with our creativity, right? We can't trust it unless we meet it. So the seeds of attunement create the opportunity for real growth, creativity, expression, what's the word I want? It's awareness, aliveness, realization. That's the realization. Yeah, you want to feel love? Just that you're loved. Like energy. There's no limit over here. Yeah. And then this will.
The pattern kind of creates around the energy. It kind of goes back to the theory of like energy has us,
Yeah,
like,
energy has us.
Like we don't have energy. Energy has us. We created around energy oh, what if we could just surrender into that process of just like, okay, here comes some more energy. I wonder what pattern is going to come around.
And I look at the church office building up here, you know. Big ticket. And I think, man, they really created this beautiful pattern, and they just don't even know, almost. Or they've lost this idea that they could just have it. You want to feel important?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm important.
Ta-da!
And then
magic wand.
And then where does it go? And, you know, maybe there's some of that happening there too. I don't know, but it feels like it's kind of one-sided. So, you know, anyway, on the spiritual growth, this rebirth, this you know, it's pain. By the way, it's absolute chaos, obviously, for most people. You know, you realize that your attunement self, your lack of attunement in some way breaks. You're invited into this bigger thing, right? And it hurts because you have to let that old pattern go,
disintegrate or reform or whatever, however you want to see that.
And it's the hardest freaking thing to do. And you have to clear enough of that trauma to get to see it clear enough that you can work with it and ultimately kind of let it go. Okay, now what's the next pattern? Well, okay, I am this divinity self, I am this great self. And the classic thing that people do is they go on an eye journey, they go on a medicine journey, they, you know, have some big spiritual experience sitting there one day and they're like, I am God. How come I didn't see this before? How come I didn't feel? Well, you're so fucked up in your lack of attunement patterns and your attachment and all those things that you just didn't have possible. Even if you did medicine at that point, at some point, but maybe at some point you free up enough energy or realization that you're on a healing path and you do medicine and you're like, I am God. And all of a sudden you have this expectation field, right? You have this assumption field that is so big and you're walking around with that shit. You're like, you need to honor my spiritual experience. I saw aliens and they told me this and you need to listen to this, right?
Or I had this vision that we're twin flames and so you gotta come be my soulmate. Or you see it for other people.
Yeah.
I had a vision that you two belong together and you gotta do it.
And you become so ridiculously inflated. And what you're feeling is the possibilities of this new awakening.
Yeah.
And they're so big and they're so beautiful. And you need to self-attune. Or you need to get, you know, traditionally, for these experiences, you had shamans. And when you started acting like that, stop it, Rafiki.
They would have you
hit you on the head.
They would go clean the toilets for the next week.
Right. Yeah, here's chop wood, carry water. Here's your broom. You know, you would have this natural. That's what the guru. That's what the teacher is supposed to do. Is attune you. This can be done self. You just have to be aware that you're going to get inflated in the spiritual path. It's not good. It's like not
totally.
If.
It's just going to happen when you get access to that big energy and that big God self. It's beautiful and big and high vibe and
totally. It's the same as the negation that happens at the kind of gateway part, right? So I have all this trauma. I feel like nothing. Nobody can love me. I'm dead. I'm broken. I'm not a human. You know, before you open up, that's the other side of it, where you just you know, you have no belonging. You have no sense of that, right? And that's kind of that side of it, you know. And then all of a sudden you find the energy and you're like, and holding that in an unattuned way. So it's the attunement game, and it's just exactly like the child game. Yeah. And that you run that pattern all the way through again.
It's like the energy and then the form, and then the energy and the form, and one of the things that's fascinating to me is that a lot of the weed killers that we put on our lawn are actually growth stimulants. They make the plants grow too fast.
Oh, interesting.
So they die.
Wow, love that.
Isn't that great?
Right. Yeah. Watch out for that kind of experience.
Yeah.
Don't
total burnout.
Yeah, total burnout. You know, I think it's probably a good place to leave that. Do you have? Is there more there?
I think just a little bit on the high vibe, low vibe thing. Part of attunement is I can see you in either one of those vibrations, and all of it is important and all of it's beautiful, and incorporate the whole scale And that's what's going to kind of help that journey be more in tune with nature, with natural. And you look at the earth, and it grows and dies and grows and dies, and it's this beautiful thing.
Expansion.
That's what we are.
Everything that expands contracts, and everything that contracts expands.
And so, tune into that. That's one way to self-attune, is to spend some time on the earth.
Yeah.
And also honor those things in other people. This high vibe only thing it's not real. You're going to burn yourself out if you're just only doing the high vibe stuff.
Yeah, holding the, we've talked about polarity, finding all the polarity, finding all the parts of yourself, not leaving any behind, is part of this game. Playing the polarity game and inhabiting the polarity is really beautiful. That's part of being open to energy, by the way. You're not open to energy on that modder side until you're open to all of it. You have to take the total sorrow, sadness, along with the total joy.
The winter and the decay and
absolutely.
Or the seed that's just sitting there in the dirt.
Yeah.
Is it a stone or a seed?
And once you're okay with that, energy will flood into you, and that's what medicine does a lot of times. It makes you it presents the way for energy to move, and you've been limiting it or dissociating it or whatever, and it breaks down those barriers, and it lets energy in, and you're feeling woof, right? And that's why sometimes people have bad trips, because they'll have to mitigate the energy that they haven't been looking at, and they'll have a huge whole trip because they'll have to mitigate the divinity that they haven't been embodying. And once energy goes through, it's going to create something, right? And so self-attunement now is the game, and you get to hold yourself, or find people who can hold you in that, and say, that's so beautiful.
Yeah,
I love that you talk to aliens, and also I'm not buying that shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like I don't need to come in.
That's your experience and your whole thing, and I'll be with you in it. And also I'll hold the boundaries.
I'll totally believe you, and I'll totally not believe you.
I can hold back to skepticism. I will hold that in skepticism for you, so that you can see that your mind's creation, your energy creation. Yes, that there's still, coming back to it. You need to see that there's limits, and that there's understandings, and there's disciplines that then will help you attune that.
So we have these huge experiences, beautiful, like access to this big energy. I went and did ayahuasca a few years ago. Huge experience. Huge energy, huge awakenings and openings, and then at the end we all sat and had soup, and I found myself washing my bowl. And it was almost like the medicine was like, this is the journey. Wash your bowl. And how much of all of that beauty can I bring into this experience of water running over my hand? And I'm sitting here and I'm washing my bowl, and it's almost worshipful to wash my bowl, and recognizing that because of the access to all that energy, there was a part of me that's like, somebody else should wash my bowl. And so it's just this beautiful kind of check.
Yeah.
That is just so lovely.
Yeah, chop wood, carry water. Here's your broom. Yogananda, and sweep the floor. This is fun and all. Here's my body, right? Here's my lived experience. Here's the things that are happening here. And wow, is there a lot that we can connect to? Energy is limitless. We're limited. Energy is limited. Now we're occupying that in that not frustrated space, but in that expansive space.
So
that's what that second birth is. It gets us into that expansive state. And if you don't do both, if you don't check in and wash your bowl, sweep the floor, live in your body, handle your resources, you'll also not have the other available to you.
Yeah.
It will go away. You'll get so lost in it that you'll go nuts. You'll become destabilized. You'll fuck with other people in a way that is not dishonoring to them. You'll create all sorts of structure around you that then affirms your divinity in some way, even more special than everybody else, and nobody that doesn't honor you that way can play.
So
yeah,
a couple of checks that we can do for ourselves,
mm-hmm.
and that will also help us become better partners, better parents, better at co-regulation, better at attunement, is, am I okay with other people not being okay? Am I okay when other people are expressing, what we might call lower vibrations, sad emotions, those kinds of things? Am I okay with other people, And if I'm not, why?
Or am I okay with another side of that? Is am I okay with the others? Am I okay with my own emotions? And am I okay with getting criticized, with getting shown?
Am I okay with other people not being okay with me?
Because I will be, if you are not okay with people being not okay with you, you are inflated.
Yeah.
Period. That's a big check.
Mm-hmm. Am I taking this? How personally am I taking this? And it gets into, one of the traps of the awakening or spiritual path is identity. Mm-hmm. And we're just designed for that. Like, it's gonna happen. You just gotta watch it.
Well, and I tell people, get your myth, live a myth. And Robert Moore would argue with this: don't live a personal myth because you're gonna get fucked over by that thing. And I say, live a myth and get it fucking attuned, right? Yeah. Like mythic attunement. We just invented that phrase today. Get your myth attuned. Find the Mater and the Father. Find the energies that can hold that with you, so that you get that balanced out, and so your myth is in that juicy, beautiful place of meaning, and then from there,
and so your myth can change and expand and grow, and you're the one holding it. You're not expecting other people to hold your myth. So if you love the aliens that you met on your ayahuasca journey, awesome, and you want that to be your myth to meet them or whatever it is, right? I do love them
so much.
That's so beautiful, and hold that. Other people don't need to be in on your alien myth in order for you to still have meaning and joy in it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to do an episode on wacky-ass worldviews. And all the different ways that people take this awakening energy and turn it into these stories that have some interesting merit. And I participate in some of these stories that are just super fun. And also, man, held with skepticism. Skepticism comes into play here. Yeah. This is totally true, and it's totally not true. Mm-hmm. But you say on the one side, so we I can't remember if you finished that thought. On the one side, are you okay with other people? Are you okay with being criticized? And then the other side, what was the other side?
Well, are you okay with other people not being okay, or being in their process or in their own myth? Is their myth challenging you personally?
Right.
Or is your myth being challenged by somebody else? By them saying, I don't believe in aliens. When you say, but I met some on my ayahuasca journey. Feel into that. That's good medicine. Because ultimately you want to be able to hold that. Because when you can do that, you're going to be grandmother's house. You're going to naturally attune people as they come in, because they know they're not responsible for your safety. And so they can just kind of be oh, I'm safe. I'm safe.
And safe is an interesting word, because you'll be safe and you'll be safe, You'll be safe as a human being. If you're not attuned, you're not a safe human being.
On both sides.
Both sides.
You're not safe for yourself or others.
You don't feel safe, and you don't feel safe to others. And if you have that sense of safety, then you are. Not that any of us want to hurt people, or but that creates energy trying to they get messed up either way.
So that kind of leads into what we've got going on this Sunday. Narcissism is a spiritual path. Kind of a quirky and a little bit edgy title that also is just this invitation to all right, we've heard about everybody being a narcissist or a caretaker or whatever, and what can we do with that actually creates some space for expansion and growth and self-knowing and healing.
Yeah. Blame and shame don't heal. taking on the empath wound in a disempowering way doesn't heal.
Mm-hmm.
None of these are healing structures. You're not going to get there from there,
mm-hmm.
right? And so what is the invitation? If life is showing us a pattern, if it's showing up in society everywhere,
mm-hmm.
I want to listen, I want to understand, and then figure out what is the way that this actually helps. What does help? If this is just, it feels like the pattern just getting worse and worse and worse, more divided and more, just fucked up
unhinged,
and unhinged. How do we work with that? So that's going to be we're going to do that as a digital product, and there's going to be healing involved with that I think is going to be really beautiful. We'll see,
And then we've got a whole month of attunement and awakening for conscious connections, and an ST temple and soul and spirit wellness. So
yeah. So join wherever you are. Join Conscious Connections site. We broadcast level 1s there, and there are usually classes on stuff like this.
So we'll do a full class on the practical side of attunement. How do you do it? Yep. Yeah, so, and demonstrate some activities and some workshop stuff that you can do to feel it, to really feel it, because it's something you really have to feel. And then in the Conscious Connections group, in the Conversations with Life group on Facebook, please join. We'll be having a question of the day. We'll be teaching shortly, at some point we'll move to that mighty network, but we'll be teaching these attunement skills as well. And so be looking for that. I think, again, feeling that got me through a big part of my spiritual messiness, my awakening process, through whatever, who's through this shit. But like that was a huge piece for me when I was feeling destroyed. And at that gate, and just to have people to sit with, just to be with, just to feel their energy, and to be felt or held that way was gorgeous. So we'll teach what that is and how to be in attunement on that energy level. Awesome. All right. Beautiful.
Okay, have a beautiful, beautiful week. Whenever we get back to another episode, a little bit inconsistent, that's okay. Resources, sort of thing. And we're doing a lot of cool stuff, and we'll continue to make